Good morning. We're calling to order the Board of Directors meeting of HART. It's Thursday, October 27th, 2016. It's about 8:35 a.m. First of all, I'd like to call for public testimony on all agenda items. We'll begin with Natalie Iwasa. Natalie, would you like to testify at this time, or? Okay, please proceed. And you know what the drill is. So on the ones, when we get there, raise your hand.
Great. Thank you, Natalie Iwasa, for the record. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to testify on the project management oversight contractor report, and specifically in certain pages, 4 and 15, it talks about delays and the reasons for those delays and increased costs. I think it's really important that, I mean, you recognized it verbally here, that some of these costs are because of poor planning and premature signing of contracts, and I think that should be reflected in our reports. On page 6, it talks about the HECO and the Davis-Bacon wages, and that's something I think is easy to estimate, and so that number should be out, should be discussed. We should have that in the public realm. Regarding the MSF, the Maintenance Storage Facility contract, it mentions that there's a non-binding mediation on 20 items. What are those items? Page 11, it talks about escalation and delay, a change order. I don't know if this has already come before the board, but if not, then please add that to the discussion. I also want to just note that the right-of-way, it makes specific mention that there are no actions in the right-of-way now that are impeding any construction. So sometimes we lose track of what causes what. So I just want to mention that. And then just a couple other things, if I may, kind of a follow-up. Last meeting, there was a concern about the flood variance from DPP, and you had said that you would follow up. And then from a July meeting, the cost of the business plan, I think Chair Hanabusa, that was one of your questions, and at that time, Dan Grabowski said he would give that cost. I haven't seen anything, and I'm really curious what that particular plan cost us. And then just one other comment regarding transparency. HART has a Facebook page. I'll just finish with this. And I've noticed that people will put stuff up there, and if it's negative, it's taken down. And that's not right. So I just ask you to look into that issue. And then I would like to testify when it comes up 5, 6, and 7.
Thank you. Any questions of Ms. Iwasa? Thank you very much, Ms. Iwasa. Natalie, I think one of the things that we will have to ask the executive director to look at is the PMOC report is the PMOC's report. So the comments that you have, we have to figure out a way for the staff to respond to you. But the PMO is not going to, I mean, it's the report to the FTA, not to us. But thank you very much. Okay, I have Barbara Armatrat. Barbara, you going to testify here, or? Oh, okay.
No, just briefly. I'll testify later, but I wanted to give you a lei so you can wear it throughout the whole.
Oh, thank you very much, Barbara. We didn't have one on. I'm sorry. Thank you so much, Barbara. Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. And you know the drill. Raise your hand when you want to testify. Is Rose? Oh, there's Rose. Do you want to testify now or later? I'll come to you, Rose. Thank you very much.
We're going to miss you.
Thank you so much. I'm glad somebody's going to miss you.
We're going to miss you too.
Thank you, Rose. And when you want to testify,
Yes.
nudge Barbara and she'll raise her hand for you. We have written testimony from Tom Berg, but Tom is not here, right? So we'll just accept it. Anyone else here wishing to testify? Yes, Mr. Homa.
Are we on camera?
Yes, yes, we are.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and I've been here since day one, and I can recollect the new board members coming on board and come and go. But I just want to acknowledge Colin Hanabusa here and Michael Formby. I remember Michael Formby when he came first on board. The HART board was still going through a lot of turmoil and trying to reestablish in which direction to go with the cost overruns and change order. And I told Mr. Formby that him being a judge in the U.S. Air Force as a retired colonel, as a full colonel, and he has that due diligence looking at it being a judge for the JAG, which is an honorable position for the U.S. Pacific Command as well. So he was doing things with his honor. And so we talked about the cost overrun and change order. I said, hey, we will have a board one time never said no to a change order. We never questioned why the change orders were made and who made it and where did it come from? What was the cause? Was it the architectural design fault? Was it the subcontractors? Subcontractors had submitted those change orders? Were they using the wrong bill of materials? Or so, we kind of had to the point because the board never knew what came up from the bottom up. So I think there's a lot of hidden costs that arise from it. And Mr. Formby was the first one said no to the change order when it came. And he was very honorable to step up to the plate and mention that. And going back to Colin Hanabusa, I have a lot of respect for her being a congresswoman. Even when she was a Senate president, she kind of kept everybody in order and shown her leadership. And we talked about what's happening, with the change order and looking at the subcontractor and the sub. So, there was no litigation or lawsuit between the sub and the sub fighting over. And it all came up to the HART board because we're the mother goose who had the money and the big purse of allocating the funding for this project as budget-wise to be fiscally responsible. But Colleen, last hearing that she mentioned about the situation of the subcontractors, they should be responsible. They should if they made a change order, they screwed up, not meeting the scope of work of the contract and the deliverable dates, they should be the one to pay for it, and out of their own pocket, out of their own profits. And I think that, I've been testifying that from day one. And I'm finding, I'm glad that Colleen had brought that up. And, even with, the board members, Buzzy Hong, he was there from day one. Damien Kim, he was there from day one. And I think they understand what the whole project scope is. But, to me, as a suggestion with the board members here, after we lose our two leaders here, you guys are all the all-star players here. You got to know that you guys are volunteering your service, not getting paid. So you got to get a lot of respect from the public. You guys got to play that role that you guys are trying to do a good deed, for the state of Hawaii. And to me, I do that with my APEC Hawaii. I get recognized internationally. And people come up to me and thank me for what I've been doing. And they're happy to get my business card. And they go back home to the Asian countries as a happy camper that they got to meet me here in Hawaii. So, I go through that kind of stuff. But, I do it for the love of Hawaii because I want to make Hawaii the place. We're the hub of Asia Pacific here. And we're making, we want to be the leaders of Asia, the 21st century. Even not trying to make Hawaii the headquarters for the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership with the Free Trade Agreement, because we want to make Hawaii the regional area for all the trade and commerce. And I have a plan here myself. But in terms of the rail, I want to showcase this rail project. I want to showcase this to the Asia Pacific, that we have a state-of-art system here, and that promotes tourism. As you know, the Hawaii Tourism Authority just last year won the Export Award, the President's Award of exporting tourism here. We have we have a U.S. Pacific Command who are the leaders of bringing peace, security, economic development, prosperity to the Asia Pacific region here. So, in those kind of terms, we're in the middle of we're island here. So we got to play that role that that we can be the leaders here, and we want to do things with due diligence and transparency, and make Hawaii the place for the 21st century. So I just want to suggest that the board members that you got to look from the big picture. You got to say when things are wrong, bring it up to the table, and you guys got to be the one to squish the bug. you think that something's wrong's coming up, then play that role. And that's my suggestion to you from all the years I've been testifying here. Thank you very much
Mr.
for
Homa.
my time.
Any questions of Mr. Homa? Thank you so very much. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify on the agenda items, any agenda items? If not, we will of course call again for testimony as we move down this agenda. At this time, the chair will defer the approval of the minutes of the meeting of September 29th, 2016 to the next meeting. And I would also, at this time, with everyone's consent, like to move agenda item out of order, and we would like to go to agenda item number 14, which is the interim executive director and CEO matter. Now, before I ask if we need to go into executive session, is there any member of the public who wishes to address this specific agenda item at this time? If not, Mr. Matsumoto, do we need to go into executive session first?
Madam Chairperson, I'd like to,
Oh, you have someone to testify? Sorry.
Sorry, I wasn't really prepared. I just want to make, Natalie Wassa for the record, just one comment. With the new CEO coming in, and I'm not sure if it's this particular item or the next, but I ask that when you look at that contract that you be very careful with bonuses. And I'm especially concerned about this with respect to the Charter Amendment 4 and the movement of O&M costs out of HART and into DTS. And I think some of you may have read my concerns about that. So I just wanted to put that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
at this time, Madam
Oh,
Chair.
wait, excuse me, sorry, Barbara. She didn't raise her hand, so she
Okay.
messed us up.
Barbara Armitage, I do have a lay for the new guy, so whenever he
Oh,
comes up,
okay.
just to let you know. Thank you.
Thank you. You didn't have to come up to tell us that. But thank you, Barbara. By the way, members, any questions of Ms. Iwasa or Ms. Armatron? Anyone else out there wishing to testify on agenda item 14, the interim executive director and CEO? If not,
Yeah, because it relates to some personnel matters, I'd like to ask that we go into executive session. So I'll move for us to convene into executive session at this time.
Check in.
just so that we're clear, the motion is the board to enter into executive session pursuant to Hawaii Revised Statutes 92-4 and subsection 92-5A4 to consult with its attorneys on questions and issues pertaining to the board's powers, duties, privileges, immunities, and liabilities, and 92-5A2 to consider the hire, evaluation, dismissal, or discipline of an officer and employee, or of charges brought against an officer and employee where consideration of matters affecting privacy will be involved. I know that's what
You read my thoughts exactly.
and thank you for the second. Members, any discussion? If not, we will be in executive session. Members, we are back from executive session, so let us pick off with Mr. Matsumoto. Members of the public, you may or may not remember that we did form PIG, a Permitted Interaction Group, as to the interim director and/or permanent director. And Mr. Matsumoto was kind enough to serve as the head of the PIG. So with that, he'll present his report to the board and to the public.
Chair, thank you. The Permitted Interaction Group was set up in August and charged with the responsibility of undertaking the search for the replacement CEO Executive Director as well as the interim CEO Executive Director. And so at this time, I'm pleased to report to the board that we have completed our search for an interim executive director to basically step in to provide leadership to HART for the period during which we will undertake the more intense process of searching for a permanent replacement for that position. So we've, during the past couple of months, we've been considering a number of different candidates whose names have been provided to us for consideration for the position. And I'll tell you that it wasn't that easy because, what we're looking for is somebody that has a high level of qualification for the position, but the position is not a permanent position, but an interim position. So as a result, it's a short-term engagement. And so, but I'm happy to report that we have been able to identify a very qualified person who not only has extensive background and experience in overseeing the management of and construction of rail projects, but who is also willing to undertake this particular challenge on the kind of terms and conditions that we've been able to establish for him. And so the group was unanimous in terms of its selection of this person. And so at this time, I'd like to announce that we would like to recommend to the board that the board appoint as interim CEO and executive director, Mr. Krishnaiah Murthy, who's a engineer and someone who's served over 40 years of experience in management of rail projects throughout the country, and then most recently in the Los Angeles Metropolitan Transit Authority. Mr. Murthy basically has agreed to various contractual terms and arrangements that I'm happy to say were successfully negotiated between the PIG as well as with Acting Executive Director Formby. And so if I can at this time introduce Mr. Murthy to the board. Oh, okay. Well, that's true. Sorry. Let me make a motion at this time that we approve the employment of Krishnaiah Murthy as HART's interim executive director and CEO.
Second.
We have a motion moved and seconded by the chair of the PIG, Mr. Matsumoto, and seconded by Damien Kim. Also, you're vice chair of the PIG, right?
Yes.
And the vice chair of the PIG. And in addition to that, I assume, Mr. Matsumoto, you want us to approve the employment agreement?
Yes, and so let me just indicate that some basic terms about the employment agreement. The employment agreement is for a period of 1 year, and it would begin in December of this year, December 4th specifically. And it's for a base salary of $400,000 a year. And also with the potential for a bonus of up to 10% of the base salary, provided that there's successful completion of certain duties and responsibilities that he's going to be tasked with. And so in addition to that, there are also certain incidental expense benefits that are going to be provided for him related to living expenses as well as transportation and relocation expenses. But that constitutes the basic terms of the agreement. It's an at-will employment arrangement. We're able to terminate him at will. There are certain provisions related to that, but I think that the short-term nature of the engagement is such that we're expect that we're not going to have to deal with that during the course of his tenure. One of the important roles that he's going to play is also to assist this board in the search process for a permanent replacement. Because of his long and extensive experience in the field of public rail projects, I think that he's going to be of tremendous assistance to us because he knows a number of the key players in the industry. He also is very familiar with officials at the FTA. And I'll ask the Executive Director Formby to speak to some of his qualifications because He has had occasion to speak to some of the people at the FTA about Mr. Murthy's qualifications for this position.
Well, thank you. And I'll just state briefly that since the FTA put the program in recovery mode, they have had an interest in the leadership of the program. And they were aware that the former Executive Director, CEO, Grabowskis, resigned. And so on the occasions that we've met with the FTA, which number 3 face-to-face, in the last 2.5 months, they have always asked about the status of the search for an interim executive director, CEO. And they have indicated support for the board's preference that that individual have extensive rail construction experience. It just so happens that the candidate that you've recommended to the board actually worked at LA Metro with the current acting administrator of the FTA, Carolyn Flowers. He has a very credible, healthy relationship with the FTA, and I think we will find that they will fully support his retention if the board so approves.
Thank you. Members, we are in a discussion segment of the motion, so any other members of the PIG or the board would like to have any comments at this time? Any other members? No?
Yeah, you don't
Yes.
mind? First of all, I just want to thank Board Member Matsumoto and Mike Formby for doing a very difficult task. In this day and age, Member Hong and I, were original in finding Mr. Grabowskis, and the cost of getting someone really good for this type of position is very demanding, is very high. And I want to thank you for the negotiations that you guys did. I also want to thank Smriti for accepting this position, because it is challenging to come into a situation that we're in at this time and put us on the right track, as we want to say, moving forward. So thank you, guys.
Any other members? Yes, Mr. Lee.
I'd like to echo Board Member Kim's sentiment, but maybe expand a little bit on it. I had the pleasure of being briefed on the upcoming budget. That's another agenda item, and the thing that leaped out at me is the proposed salary levels for like assistant project managers. And now that we're deep into the construction of the project, and given my own professional experience as an attorney in real estate matters and over having to deal with construction problems, it struck me that given the salary levels that we're authorized to hire at, you can't hire the kind of people you need for a project of this magnitude and this complexity. And then it also extended to some accountants that we need to hire. And the fact that those salary levels are just too low to bring on experienced, qualified people. And I understand the fact that because these are city employees, there are salary limitations that we're bound by. But that troubles me, because given the challenges of this project, if we can't hire the right level of personnel to properly execute their duties and responsibilities, how are we going to avoid future problems down the road? I mean, I dare say, I wonder if to some degree that's why we've had some of the problems we've had. And so there seems to me to potentially be a structural problem with how HART is set up. And I would invite Murthy, as he undertakes his responsibilities, and given his background and experience with some of the mainland agencies, to report back to the board on what his thoughts are in that regard, because I personally have very grave concerns about that. And unless we fix it, I think we're going to have problems down the road, no matter how hard we try. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members' comments? I do want to thank the members of the PIG and let the public know that the PIG members had intensive discussions on this specific issue, because they were very concerned about who would be the person who leads us forward. and also able to select the permanent executive director. So I want to thank them all for the great work that they did. Any other comments? Anything else, members? Then, members, how about we'll have to go to a vote now. So, of course, we are voting upon the recommendation of the PIG, and in addition to that, and as part of that, the employment agreement that you've all been given a copy of. So with that, do we have unanimous consent among the board?
Yes.
We do. Thank you very much. And members, at this time, I would like to introduce and have him come forward, though he goes by Murthy, Mr. Murthy, and to come and introduce yourself to probably more to the general public. Can I get to do the honors?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Krishna Murthy.
Oh, hold on.
Hold on.
Can I get a lay first?
You have to be late.
My name is Krishna Murthy. I have over 40 plus years of transit experience. Basically working.
Mr. Murthy, you are going to have to sit by the mic. I see our media people going crazy here because they want you to.
You're on closed circuit TV.
I know.
Okay. Let me start all over again. My name is Krishna Murthy. I've been in transit business for over 40 plus years. I have worked on several transit projects all over the country, also abroad, in London, Delhi, and Singapore, places like that. I am privileged to have this opportunity to work on this project. I have been to Honolulu a couple of times before. I've come here once as a peer reviewer in the past 10 years or so when this project was just starting. So I always felt that this project has got a great opportunity for Honolulu to showcase its beautiful environment and scenery to the world, and then make their visit to Honolulu a very comfortable one with the mass transit in place. And the mass transit that it provides the economic backbone for development and connectivity of the people. That's what I see. I see the problems, but I also see the ultimate benefits of this project. So my focus would be to take it where it is now and not spend too much time on what happened in the past, see how fast we can move the project forward, and then try to get the support of the board, elected officials, and work closely with the FTA and the city and get this project moving in the right direction.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Murthy. Members, any of you have any questions or comments to Mr. Murthy? Thank you so very much, and welcome aboard.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So with that, members, we are going to go back to the agenda, and it is number 4 is the chair's announcement. I know this is kind of new to the agenda, and I used the chair's prerogative to put it on. And it is really my opportunity now to, as many of you are probably aware, my resignation from this board is effective tomorrow. So it's, thank you very much for approving Mr. Murthy, because I feel one of the outstanding matters that we had to deal with was that, and I would feel awfully bad if I left without the interim director having been named and approved by this board. I also would like to say it's been an honor to serve with my fellow board members, and I believe that HART is in good hands. I do want to make a plug for the fact that the Charter Amendment number 4, which discusses the quote, the structure of HART, which is subpart 3, I believe, is very important, because I hope what the public realizes is that this board has functioned very well, has taken on oversight and taken it to heart, so to speak. But more importantly than that, it needs to have the structural change within the charter in order to continue to do the good work that I know that this board is so capable of. I also would like to put in a plug, because I hate to leave loose ends, and I just want John Henry Felix to know that I am listening to him when he brings up his forensic audit. And I do believe that, yes, there may be a sense that you don't want to delve in the past, but I also happen to believe that unless you understand what happened in the past, you're going to tend to make the same mistakes again. So I hope that the board considers how we can proceed with that. We've had so many discussions, and I'm always the one who raises, that's pre-HART, or that's, that HART didn't exist then, or why did we sign that contract then? Why didn't we wait? And those are critical considerations that I think the public wants answered. We as a board has come, in my opinion, a very long way to building public confidence, and we have to continue to do that. We have to always remember that this project is really for the people of the City and County of Honolulu. It is not HART's project per se. We serve a specific constituency, not only the people of the City and County of Honolulu, but the people of the state and people who come to Hawaii. This is a very important project, and it is important that this board continues to do what I believe it has done. And asking the hard questions is all part of it, and demanding right answers is part of it. But I think that the way the board is presently chartered, which says that we will not in any way interfere with the administrative functions of HART, is wrong. And for that reason, I hope that after the election, this board will have the necessary powers and duties that it so rightfully deserves to have, and move this project forward with Mr. Murthy and the subsequent permanent executive director for the people. So thank you very much for the opportunity to have served as your chair and a member of this board. And in case anybody's wondering, I actually counted. I've been on the board for 15 months and chair for 6. So please don't think I've been on HART forever. I have this habit where people think I've been around for so long. It's really not that long, guys. So if we were able to do what we're able to do in this short period of time, imagine what you'll be able to do with the proper backing of the charter itself. So thank you all so very much. Thank you. With that, thank you. There's a resolution here. This sounds kind of weird. 2016-22. Acknowledgement and appreciation of me. This sounds kind of weird, Cindy, that I would put one in for myself. So do we?
I think Mr. Formby can take this.
Okay, Mr. Formby.
Sure. So we did enter a resolution in acknowledgement and appreciation of Colleen Hanabusa. And if you don't mind, I'll read it for the public. Whereas Colleen Hanabusa has served on the board of directors of the Honolulu Authority for Rapid Transportation since June of 2015. And whereas Ms. Hanabusa served as the board's chair since April of 2016. And whereas Ms. Hanabusa has had a distinguished career of over 35 years as an attorney in private practice, focusing on labor law and environmental law. And whereas Ms. Hanabusa's career in public service include 12 years in the Hawaii State Senate, 3 of which she served as Senate President. And whereas Ms. Hanabusa went on to serve Hawaii in the U.S. House of Representatives for 2 terms, where she was a member of the House Armed Services and Natural Resources Committees, as well as the Subcommittee on Indian and Alaska Native Affairs. And whereas Ms. Hanabusa has been an extremely dedicated board member, having invested much time and energy into ensuring the rail project's success. And whereas Ms. Hanabusa utilized her wealth of experience in law, public policy, and public administration in leading the board. And whereas Ms. Hanabusa was instrumental in bringing about changes and improvements in HART's leadership, governance, transparency, and oversight. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Directors of HART as follows, that the Board of Directors of the Honolulu Authority for Rapid Transportation officially recognize Colleen Hanabusa's distinguished and devoted service as a member of the board and extend to her its sincere appreciation for her many contributions to HART and the people of the City and County of Honolulu, and that a certified copy of this statement of appreciation be transmitted to Colleen Hanabusa, and is to be adopted by the board.
Can I make a friendly amendment? Can Damian Kim sign this? It sounds weird that I would sign it to myself. So with that,
Chair, I'd like to move to adopt the resolution number 2016-22.
I think before we do that, we have people who wanted to testify. So let's Natalie Iwasa, followed by Barbara Armitage. Then we will go to your motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie Wassa, for the record. Thank you so much. I just wanted to highlight the last whereas clause and being instrumental in bringing about changes. I think had you not been involved, we would, and Mike Formby as well, that we would still be on a course of not knowing a lot of information that has been brought forth. So I really appreciate your work with this board, and I also wanted to just mention that there's still plenty to do. The transparency part still needs a lot of work, but as a member of the public and somebody who's paid attention, I do appreciate the work that you've done here.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments to Ms. Iwasa? Thank you. Barbara?
Thank you, Barbara Armentrout. I'm a member of the City and County of Honolulu Transportation Commission, but I'm speaking as an individual. I just got appointed to that. I just want to thank you, Colleen, for the short period of time that you stepped in, and along with Mr. Formby, we're able to get a lot of stuff done because I've been going to HART meetings from the get-go, and it just seemed like they were stagnant meetings, and things really started rolling once you stepped in to fill the position. And most especially, staying as long as you have, being that 12 days away is election and you're on the ballot. So it just shows how committed that you are when it comes to things that you do and the many years that you have served for the public of Hawaii in the state legislature and also in Washington. So I just want to thank you very much.
Thank you, Barbara. And thanks for our Halloween candy. On behalf of all the board members, thank you
Trick
very
or
much.
treat, that was a treat.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wishing to speak to this resolution? If not, Mr. Matsumoto.
So I so move for the adoption of resolution number 2016-22.
And I second.
And there's a second. Members, any further discussion? If not, do we have unanimous consent?
Yes.
We do.
Here,
Thank
here.
you. Thank you very much. With the amendment, that is Vice Chair who signs. Members, we're now moving to the next item on the agenda, which is Resolutions 2016-23, and that is in acknowledgement and appreciation of Michael Formby. Anybody want to do this?
You want me to read it?
Yes.
Okay, I'll read it.
Mr. Kim.
Whereas Michael D. Formby has served on the Board of Directors of the Honolulu Authority of Rapid Transit, HART, from 2013 until his temporary assignment as Acting Executive Director, and whereas Mr. Formby has had a distinguished career as an attorney in private practice, focusing on admiralty and maritime law, insurance defense, commercial litigation, government relations, administrative law, and contract law. And whereas Mr. Formby served the state of Hawaii as an interim director of Department of Transportation, Harbors Division between 2007 and 2010. And whereas Mr. Formby has also served the City and County of Honolulu as a director of the Department of Transportation Service since 2013. And whereas Mr. Formby has served as the acting executive director of HART since August 2016. And whereas Mr. Formby has evidence of strong commitment to transportation and the improvement of life for the residents of the city and county of Honolulu. And whereas Mr. Formby has been instrumental in guiding HART through a period of transition and ensuring continuity in fulfilling the vision of the 20-mile, 21-station Honolulu Rail project. And now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Directors of HART as follows. That the Board of Directors of Honolulu Authority for Rapid Transportation officially recognize Michael D. Formby, distinguished and devoted services as a member of the board and as acting executive director, and extend to him his sincere appreciation for his many contributions to HART and the people of the city and county of Honolulu, and that a certified copy of this statement of appreciation be transmitted to Michael D. Formby.
Thank you very much. Before we take any action, Natalie Iwasa.
Thank you, Natalie Wass. I'll try not to cry. Mike, you're not looking. I also sincerely appreciate the work that you've done with this board and the, stepping into the position of CEO. Although we don't agree with respect to a lot of things on the rail project, I know that we do agree that governance, transparency, the public's perception is very important, and something that I think that you and Colleen have both brought forward here in the actions that you've done. So I specifically appreciate this second to the last whereas, and your commitment to not only this project but transportation in general. And I would also, because of the work that you've done, I would ask that you amend this slightly to include changes in governance and oversight. I feel that his role, the two of you together have brought forth the significant changes that we've seen in this board and the project over the last few months. So if you would please make that
Where do you want that change?
Oh, it doesn't matter to me, just that it's in there.
Oh, somewhere that we say that?
Just to say it in there as one of the whereas clauses.
Okay.
And I really appreciate the changes, and the board still has a lot of work, but two of you have really done a lot of work, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you, thank you. Any questions of Ms. Iwasa? Not? Barbara, do you want to speak too?
Thank you, Barbara Armitrout. Again, I'm a member of the Transportation Commission, but I'm speaking as an individual. He had no qualms, Mr. Formby, in jumping over to HART when it was needed, even though the handy van rider community is sorry to see him go from DTS, because he done so much for the handy van community since he's been DTS director. But he partnered with Colleen Hanabusa, and I think a lot of things got really done, and I think the public really trusted how fast things moved along since that happened. And anything that Mike Formby is involved in, he always gives 150% of any project he's involved in, and we become dear friends. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Any other questions? Oh, yes.
May I make a statement?
Oh, wait,
Sure.
Before you do, let me get rid of the public.
Yes, absolutely.
Get rid of the, anybody else in the public? Yes, Rose.
I'm Rose Poe. I just want to say Mike Formby has did a great service for this community. He has tried to help anybody that needed the help. Even with the rail cars, he thinks about the disabled people, and he's just a miracle worker. And with him going, I hope this new guy can go in his place, see what he sees, and follow the lines, how the rail is going. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. Any questions of Rose? Not? Mel Kahele, are you standing to speak or? Okay, thank you. Welcome, Mel.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Mel Kaheli, longtime resident of Makakilo. Also work for the Ironworkers Stabilization Fund under the leadership of T. George Paris. I want to thank, and I'm going to go back to Resolution 22, Chair. We want to thank you for all your hard work, your goal in trying to complete this rail project, and don't want to mention it, but I was stuck in traffic for 2 hours and 10 minutes this morning. I was one of the victims out there. But that's how important this rail project is to us that lives on the west side. I hope the next chair is going to try to fill your shoes. I know it's hard to fill, and get this rail project completed. Mr. Formby, I always had an open, direct line with this guy. I believe he's the only guy that I know that's held a position for such a short period of time. Yeah? Was it a month and a half? Maybe less. But we want to thank you both on behalf of the ironworkers and for me as a resident of Makakilo for doing a great job on this board. Hopefully the next chair is going to be completely focused on completing what we voted for years ago to get elevated 21 stations, 20 miles, steel-on-steel rail project completed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mel. Any questions of Mel? Thank you very much. Any other members of the public who wish to come forward at this time? If not, then we will entertain a resolution, then we'll go to you for comments, okay? The motion?
So I'd like to make a motion to accept the resolution 2016-23.
Any second?
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion?
Yes,
Sir,
please.
Mark.
Thank you, Chair. I had the great pleasure of working directly with Director Formby since the beginning of 2013, and my experience with him has been extremely positive. He's one of the most dedicated, honest people I've ever met. So I would just reiterate all the things that are in the resolution and say that I wish him best of luck, and I think that whatever he ends up doing is going to be to the great pleasure of everyone that he has a chance to work with. But I just wanted to acknowledge that I really did appreciate his support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Terry. Oh, Art Chalico.
In the nearly 4 years that I've known and worked with Mike, he's always been a friend of the Department of Planning and Permitting, and a real champion and partner with the department and the transit-oriented development initiatives that we've worked so hard to progress. And I just want to thank you, Mike, for everything that you've done for the department, for the city, and for HART. Thank you so much, Mike.
Thank you, Art.
Terry Lee.
I'd like to also acknowledge the fact that I started serving on the board at the same time as you did, Colleen, and I got to know you and Mike a lot better. And I just want the public to appreciate the fact that both you and Mike, I think, are stellar examples of what a board member should be on HART, questioning, not simply accepting things at face value, probing deeper, working hard behind the scenes to really understand what's going on. And so, I can only hope that I can emulate the effort that you both have put forth. And I agree with Natalie that the two of you have made a very significant contribution to the way this board functions for the better. And so for that, I'm very appreciative, and I'm very sorry to see you guys leave.
Thank you, Terry. Any other comments, members? I did fail to do one thing, and I hope that everyone will accept it as a friendly amendment, and that is what Natalie asked for, and she didn't care where it was placed, so we can leave it to our wordsmithers to do that. And that's, of course, the concept of change and oversight. and that's to 2016-23. So with that, members, can we, do we have unanimous consent with the amendment?
Here,
We
here.
do. Thank you very much. Members, we're now moving to item number 7, which is the presentation of HART's fiscal year 2018 operating and capital budget and 6-year capital plan. And that's Diane Arakaki, and this is, and I guess Mike, and this is just a presentation, members. It doesn't require any action.
Thank you, Chair. And if I can make an initial introduction, Diane, please come up whenever you're ready. But I wanted to discuss, and I think we alluded to this at the last meeting, and I'm very thankful that board members Terry Lee and Terry Fujii have already had the opportunity to come in to the agency and to receive the budget briefing and understand the difference between the way the process is happening this year versus prior years. And the big difference is that for the first time, the agency is following the practice that is really used throughout the city and, for that fact, the state as well. And that is a process whereby typically in August and September, you call for your divisions within the agency to make their request for what they believe are the funds necessary to be as functional as they can be. And that was the priority this year. We asked Sam Carnaggio and Brendan Morioka and the entire team to look at the budget from a functionality perspective. The project has gone from $5.2 billion to 6.8, potentially to 8.6. Many things have changed, so it doesn't mean that the budget of the past works for the budget of today and the future. And that's to Terry Lee's points that he made earlier, and I appreciate those comments. So the call was made for the team to honestly look at their budgets and decide whether or not they needed to propose changes. And then the change goes through an internal vetting in HART, and then eventually, at this board's request, the introduction today, and hopefully the referral to Finance Committee, it will go through vetting by the board. So that at the end of the day, when the board approves it later in November and it's transmitted to the mayor and to the council, it will be a fully vetted budget that reflects the staff's request for what they need to deliver a functional project, an efficient project, cost-efficient project to the taxpayers. And so it is a change in process. I think it's something that will go forward, but today Diane Arakaki will in very brief terms describe the change in the process and what we hope happens. So I hope the board is willing to accept these changes.
Thank you. Diane?
Yes, good morning. Diane Arakaki, your Chief Financial Officer. Just here to summarize our process and schedule going forward on the budget for fiscal year 2018. As you know, we've submitted the staff requested operating and capital budgets and also the 6-year capital plan for your consideration and review. And the budgets are all based on a program not to exceed $6.8 billion, which is what we have revenue to support to date. These requests are scheduled to be reviewed and discussed at the November 10th and 21st meetings of your Finance Committee and the full Board of Directors, respectively. And transmittal of the operating and capital budgets per the schedule up here depicts that the FY 2018 budgets will be submitted to the Mayor and City Council by December 1st per Article 17 of the City Charter, as we have done so in the past. Council will review our budgets between February and early June of 2017, and I will be returning to you with these budgets and the 6-year capital plan again for your review prior to June 30, 2017 for the adoption for the fiscal year starting July 1st, 2018. And with that, that's just a high-level summary of where we are today and my understanding of and plan for our way forward in terms of our process and schedule with respect to your board's review and consideration of staff's requested budgets.
Members, any questions? Any questions? I have one, Diane. Did I hear you correctly when you said that the budget that's going to be presented is $6.8 billion?
No, that I have put together for your consideration is based on the revenue we have to date. Not to exceed $6.8 billion through with GET revenue through 2027.
And I guess the question that I have, and it goes to both you and Mike, is that we know the 6.8 billion is not sufficient.
Yes.
So I don't want to see us caught in the same problem of taking something to city council and saying 6.8 billion, when we know that we've actually, HART has actually come up with different statements, 7.9 and 8.6. So how do you reconcile it? How do you propose to do this without, for example, determining by December 1st how we're going to do the recovery plan? Because we don't know how we're going to do it yet.
Yes, I'm just stating that that's the budget that I've submitted, that is revenue, that doesn't exceed revenue currently. Should additional revenue be made available, clearly with respect to a budget process, whether it's to council and this board, we'll be coming back to you prior to June 30, for example, with additional revenue and a budget not to exceed potentially a higher amount. So City Center Guideway contract, for example, in the Pearl Highlands Garage is not included in the current
I see.
requested budget.
That was going to be my question, because I was going to say, I don't want to see, even if I won't be here, the next board chair or whoever is going before city council to give them the 6.8 that they know is not sufficient and have everything else in there.
Yes.
So it's, as long as we've
That is what
adjusted.
I meant by 6.8 billion.
Okay.
Included in that is the exclusion of those two very large contract packages and costs that we all know, and has been stated many times, we do not have the funding for to complete.
Members, any questions, any follow-up on that? If not, then the chair will refer the fiscal year 2018 operating and capital budget and 6-year capital plan, which is also an interesting thing, but you can discuss it at another meeting, the 6-year capital plan. We'll refer to the Finance Committee, which of course Terry Fujii is the chair of. So that's, members, hearing no objections, that's going to be the referral. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, Ms. Iwasa. Yes.
Thank you, Natalie Wassa, for the record. I'm glad to see this change in process, and as you go forward, I would like you to keep in mind certain things here. First of all, because we are considering Charter Amendment 4, which would significantly change what happens here in the costs, I would like you to ask how much of the budget for this coming year that you're considering is related to O&M, and because that piece of it would go into DTS. So I think that's really important for us to know. Secondly, with respect to comments made by Board Lee and salaries, every time this comes up, I always ask, what are the fringe benefits? What are the other pieces, the benefits that come with the salaries that we need to understand in order to evaluate the entire package? Because, for example, in the budget here, you have about 40 to 50% of the salary is benefits. And generally in the public, you're looking at 30%. So while the salaries may be lower, the entire package is what we really need to consider. Regarding the 6-year capital plan, on page 11, it shows a deficit in one of the years. And the city, by law, cannot have a deficit. And so I think that really needs to be changed to, it can be positive, but it can't be negative. And a lot of that is because of the huge increase in construction. Then also with respect to the 6-year capital plan, and to your point, Chair, of the estimated total costs, if we need to, we should have 2 plans, because we should be able to look at that and evaluate that at this point. And also, I think a critical component of that is looking at the cash flow over that same range, because the cash flow is going to determine the debt, which is also going to determine the interest component of the overall plan. So I ask you to take a look at those particular issues. And then also just one other thing on the interest expense. There's an assumption in there that's $1 million a year. That should actually be tied to the debt level, and that should be a pretty easy calculation rather than just assuming a straight million over the years. So thank you for allowing me to give those comments.
Thank you, and Natalie, because this will go to the Finance Committee, I trust that you will come back when the Finance Committee does meet on this.
Well, I will do my best.
Thank you very much. Any questions of Ms. Iwasa? If not, Barbara Armitrout.
Barbara Armitrout. I'm a member of the Transportation Commission, but I'm speaking as an individual. Well, Natalie and I must be thinking alike here, because that's exactly what I had written down here. Over the years, I've asked, what is the fringe benefits too? Because with the regular pay of $10,837,800, fringe benefits an additional $5,056,000. It's half of the regular pay. I think the public has the right to know what kind of fringe benefits. There's people out there working for minimum wage at McDonald's, and other people are getting a lot of fringe benefits. So. Also in the future, I would like to see some figures or presentation on operations and maintenance. We've asked repeatedly what they might have, give us an idea what's going on. Because it's currently on the upcoming ballot as Charter Commission Amendment 4, and it's going to be transferred to DTS. So you're voting on something you don't even know what the figures are. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Members, any questions of Ms. Armitrout? Not any other member of the public wishing to address item number 7?
Can I ask
Yes.
something? Just a question, and I don't know, Mike, if you notice. I'm assuming you folks, the public is asking about city and county employees' benefits. Is that correct? And if it is, Mike, isn't it on like a website that has what the benefits are? Because isn't it all the same?
It is. So if they're city employees, it is in the Department of Human Resources website. A lot of our contracts are personal services contracts, and then otherwise they're consultant contracts. And so it's not entirely apples to apples. It's apples to oranges. And for example, if we hire an employee today under a personal services contract, with the time that's left on the project, or for the period of time that their personal services contract is for, they will never vest in the employee retirement system.
Correct.
They'll never receive one of the major benefits that city employees who are recruited for longevity and retention over a 20, 30-year period of time will see, because this is a project. This is not a department. This is not an ongoing established department. It is a project. It is for a period of time. Once we get into revenue service date, then it depends on what the voters decide about future extensions, but it's not a department.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? If not, Mike Formby, I forgot to give you your list.
Oh.
I was wondering why Cindy was giving me this. Thank you.
So, Chair, can I make a couple of other comments?
Yes.
Just for the boards and maybe the public's. I appreciate the comments of both Natalie Iwasa and Barbara Armitrout, and I'll tell you that you do see the deficit in the 6-year capital budget, because we provided the board the budget that's based upon revenue today. And we do have also an $8.6 billion capital budget if we were to go to the legislature, but we did not want to appear presumptive here today and to present to you, yes, we're assuming we're going to get $8.6 billion. That would look bad and it would be inappropriate. So we're living within our means, and the budget that will be run through the board is the budget based on the expected revenue under the current GET federal funding.
Thank you. Members, any questions?
So,
Acting
Chair,
Director.
may I ask,
Yes.
so is there then going to be a second or parallel process for some, for updating the board with a new budget? I assume we're not going to wait another year before, if in fact the legislature and the city council decides to add additional money to the project, at what point would the new budget come back to the board members?
Yeah, so it's really a matter of timing. I mean, the city center contract is not expected to go out before we have another opportunity to visit the budget in the next fiscal year. So I don't see that as a problem. The only potential issue is the Pearl Highlands Transit Center parking garage and off-ramp. And that's one that we would have to discuss. But for the purposes today, the budget that you adopt is a one-year operating budget, and then the capital budget is a two-year capital budget. But it's intended to cover the current contracts and to get us all the way through the fiscal year without having to actually open up the budget process again.
I think Mark, the issue is when we talk about the budget, right, this process that I believe HART is going through now is to get the submittal to the city council through the mayor's office, which is required under the charter. I think there's also, and we've done it in the past, which is the concept of like a budget refresh within HART itself. So I think there's potentially two different, Natalie kind of called it almost like two books, but it really is a situation where we've got a deadline, or HART's got a deadline that's got to be complied with because of charter and because of presentation through the mayor to the city council. But there's also the concept of what is, for example, the financial plan, what is the refresh that we're looking at. So I foresee that what this board will be asked to do is submit something to the mayor on time for the budget process, but then also that it doesn't end there, because we really do have critical questions that we have to deal with as the entity overseeing all of the financial plans and so forth. So there is, I think, I see it almost as two budget processes going forward. Mike, do you?
No, that's right. And our deadline for submission under the charter is December 1st.
Right.
So we won't know the answer to the recovery plan, to the budget to build, before we have to submit to the mayor and the city council.
So the public, when they see what goes to the mayor, remember that we know we don't have sufficient funds to complete the project as presently anticipated. And because of that, but we also do not want to submit something that is non-transparent and somehow misstates what we're doing. So this really is, I think, the first time that the HART is being asked to kind of walk that dual line. Because what we've done in the past, I believe, is unfortunately come up with a budget that fits whatever we thought we had, and that's not correct. Because we can't say we're going to finish this project with $6.8 billion, because we're not. But at the same time, we have to, with the 6-year plan, basically balance out in the end. So it's really a difficult position, but that's what we're going to have to deal with.
And Chair, if I can make one final comment on the operations and maintenance issues that are brought up by the testifiers. There are only 2 current positions in HART that are O&M, and those are on the design build side. So when you design and build a system, you have to be working on operations and maintenance issues in that process. So the charter amendment speaks to the actual revenue service operations and maintenance of a system that is operating, which will be years in the future. So it's not anticipated that if the charter amendment passes, that you would take design and build O&M personnel that are in HART today and put them over in DTS and make them somehow work efficiently with HART. That's not the concept, and it never was the concept when it was discussed with the Charter Commission. And I'm happy to speak to Natalie and Barbara, and maybe we need to have a discussion at some point, perhaps a briefing, where the public understands that it was not taking away current O&M assets who are working on the design and the construction of the project from HART and putting them in DTS.
And then what the public should also realize is both FTA and now the GET that takes effect, the extension of the 5 years, prohibit the use of funds for O&M. But the initial funding was not clear on that point. So yeah, Mike is absolutely correct. So it's like so many of these things are kind of a balancing act for the board into the future. Any other questions or comments? With that, let's go to item number 8, risk management presentation, Alex Cross and Sam Carnaggio.
So thank you, Chair. I wanted to make an introduction for Alex and Sam. So I asked Alex. Alex's official title is Director of Special Projects, and that includes, as a major subset, risk management. And I asked Sam and Alex to come up today and to brief the board on the steps that the agency has taken in 2016, this year, to quantify the risk on each project in the program. And the ultimate goal is for them to identify risks, which allows us to then manage risk and mitigate risk. And so Alex and Sam have put together a program that I think you will see going forward will allow us to contain cost, to mitigate risk, and it's something that we wanted the board and the public to be aware of. We have been out briefing on this, and we intend to brief the City Council on it as well. So thank you both.
Good morning, Chair and HART Board. Sam Carnaggio, Project Director. Earlier this year, the PMO, in interfacing with us, suggested that our risk management program be increased and brought into a more robust program. So we went out and we went to a consultant, HDR, brought them in and had them report to Alex and developed a much more viable program. In April, PMO conducted a risk refresh, and we presented our program to them, told them where we were headed, and they gave us the thumbs up, an endorsement that we were headed in the right direction. After that, we spent the past couple of months on the program under Alex's leadership, and we think we've gotten pretty good results out of it. We've shared it with the PMO. They've given us actually a lot of credit to Alex for the way the program's developed. I want you to know that the program was instrumental in developing the budget that we have now, the 8.6. It gives us the contingency that covers the risks that were identified through this program, and it's a key element in our confidence in the budget that we have now, that we won't need to go back to you, the council, or the legislature in the future. So Alex Cross, as Director Formby indicated, is the manager of this program, and he's going to give you an overview of what we have going on right now.
Thank you. Alex?
Thank you. Hello, board members. Thank you for having me today. A little bit about me before I start. I grew up here in Hawaii, left for college up in the Pacific Northwest, lived up there for about 6 years working on a variety of engineering construction projects. Got my degree in electrical engineering before I came back. When I returned home 5 years ago, I had the opportunity to work on this project, and I saw it as a great opportunity to come home on a challenging technological project. I got the opportunity to work in the systems group initially. One of the funny things that we used to joke about early in my career when we were commissioning jobs, as electricals, we were the tail of the dog. We'd always show up on site when there's no budget or time left. And you know, as a critical element of project delivery, it's all about managing time and budget so that when you get to the end of the job, you do have those elements. So with that, I'm going to give you an update on our risk management program and how we've updated it to really focus on project delivery going forward. So on this slide, I've broken down the 3 key elements to risk management and the process that we're using today. There's 3 steps that are instrumental in delivering risk management. It's a cost risk assessment where we're defining our base cost and schedule. We're identifying any potential risks on the contracts. We're developing step 2, we develop a risk response strategy of how we're going to mitigate or manage those risks. And then in step 3, we monitor and control each of those risks. How are we doing? How are we performing? Do we need to modify our response strategy? Those 3 steps give us the information to make decisions based on evidence that's happening out in the field and give us direction for financial planning or contingency allocation. On this slide, I want to go over just in general a diagram of a project's life cycle cost. We break a project into four phases. We have a planning stage, design stage, construction stage, and project completion. The black line in the middle of all of these curves is what you would probably call an estimate. And with each one of those estimates at different phases of a project, you have variability. And you can see what we're trying to depict here is that at the planning stage, there's a lot of variability in your estimate. There's a lot of unknowns, undefined risks, or events that could happen as you progress. When you get to the design stage, some of those unknowns become known and your variability decreases, and so forth. So this is just a diagram to give you guys an idea of what we're looking at as a project life cycle. On the next slide, I want to show you a comparison of what traditional estimating is versus what we're doing in the risk management program of risk-based estimating. Traditionally, you'd have a project-based cost or an estimate, and defined with the variability, you would assign a particular percentage of contingency, usually a fixed percentage, say 15%. And that percentage would usually be dependent upon the type of work you're doing. You wouldn't assign the same amount of contingency for an accurate parking lot as you would for a transit guide-based system. So that is a traditional, that is still done today. But for the risk management program, what we've done is we've done a risk-based estimate where we take a project's base cost and schedule, we strip out all the contingencies, we look at project key elements where there's variability or undefined things and assign variabilities to them as part of the project-based cost. But then we also look at that in the contract terms and say, okay, let's identify key risks here that could affect this project. And based on quantifying each of those individual risks based on schedule and cost, we build up a contingency reserve for that project to give you a risk-based estimate. So in the next slide, I'm just going to show you again, this is another diagram of the process where we take the existing project data, the base schedule, base cost, risk register. We validate those data sets, cost and schedule, assign variabilities to the key elements that we need. We identify the risks. We assign likelihoods of occurrence, and we quantify the impacts of each one of those events in a time, schedule, or cost. We take that information and use a modeling software which employs a Monte Carlo simulation where we take thousands of iterations of that project and its delivery, and we take into account each one of these events and the likelihood of occurrence and the magnitude of impact. And we get analysis that gives us bell curves of likelihood of delivery.
So, question. So all the data that you're putting into this, you physically have to, I guess, like you look at utility risk from the last slide. So you're physically looking at the utility risk yourself, or somebody's looking at it and punching in a number.
Yeah.
And then it compares it to other projects that had similar risk and then spits out a percentage or something?
So yeah, I'll get into that specifically in step one. What we do is when we're validating costs and then when we do identify risk, it's not done in a vacuum. It's done with project teams and stakeholders. So we gather the engineers, the construction managers, we get the field teams in the room, we get right-of-way, we get a large group in a room and we discuss every one of those risks. And so it's a team effort to really define and quantify each one of those. And we do use existing data from historical, of what we've seen on previous, say on the west side, on the West Oahu Station or guideway contracts. We do use that data. It does give us cost basis. But we do look forward as to what is down the line that we could possibly hit. So. And that data is constantly updated, as you'll see throughout.
Okay.
Okay. So, as you had asked, part of the step one, after we collected all the data, existing data that we can collect that's available, we hold workshops with teams to validate that data. You know, you usually get the people who put together the estimates and the schedules, and then the people who are going to be responsible for delivering that work. We get them in the room, we validate it. If there's any questions or uncertainties amongst the team members, we assign percentages based on experiences. We then go into a process where we try to identify and quantify any risk, potential risks to that specific project. These are pretty intense workshops that last hours and sometimes days, and it's iterative. Part of the main goals of these workshops that we seek to or strive to accomplish are defining the events properly, and we really want to get specific with what the risk is. We want to know what's the likelihood it's going to occur, the potential costs and impacts, and if the event occurs, we put a range based on those cost impacts. So it's not just a single dollar value or schedule value. We look at what's the lowest impact, potential impact, what's the most likely impact, and what's the high end. So we want to give the teams a chance to tell a full story of exposure. I mean, give us the worst case, the best case, and where you think it's most likely going to land. So it's not just one single data point. And then we also look at whether or not this event is correlated to other contracts. So if, for example, you have a scheduled delay in one contract, will that push out another? The next step is developing risk response strategies. In that first step, what we are really striving to do is define that initial risk. In this step, what we want to do is talk about, well, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to do it? How are we going to manage this risk? The goal is to reduce the impact of cost of schedule or the probability of occurrence, or both, if possible. In the chart on the left, you'll see typical strategies of what we do to mitigate or deal with these risks. For threats, you try to avoid it if possible at first. If you can't avoid it, you try to transfer the risk. If you can't transfer it, you try to mitigate. Risk opportunity is something that either cuts cost or speeds up schedule. That's something that we want to exploit. And if we can't exploit it, we want to share it. If you can't share it, you're going to have to maybe asking yourself, well, how do you share an opportunity? That's something where, like on a design-build contract, if the design builder has if the contractor has a better way to build something quicker and cheaper, you would share in that savings with them. So it gives them an incentive to be creative. So once we get those two steps completed, what I have here is screenshots of the actual system that we're using. So where the data goes and how we capture it and what we do with it. We have an access database that includes the information for the ID and the quantifications of each of these risks. We develop our response strategies, and then it's all about the monitoring control. How are we actually performing? What are we doing? What we said we were going to do about it, and how are we doing it? Where are we in the process? Now, all of this is captured in the database that helps us model and project and make us informed decisions going forward. It's about transparency, getting the people on the field who are seeing things, having to deal with the day-to-day construction, and keeping the people in the office as managers, keeping them informed when they make decisions. How is it going to impact? It gives us the ability to run scenarios, what ifs, looking forward, what have you. So it's been an integral part, as Sam said, in developing budgets going forward and the financial planning. but it's all about project delivery.
Thank you. Members, do you have any questions? Mr. Chalcombe?
How does the risk management system apply to unknown variables, say like on the Dillingham corridor, where underground utilities are not necessarily known, what's there, where it is, and how much it may cost to reroute and replace?
So for that specific example, you'll always have unknown utilities, unknown or misidentified utilities. That's something that every project that does road work will have, especially here in Hawaii. For that risk, what we've done, we've defined that and looked at what the base cost estimate is for utilities, the utility work in that corridor, and kind of looked at similar projects in the area and what they've experienced as cost overruns for misidentified or unidentified utilities in the area. So if, for example, if there was a project done near where we're doing work that had $30 million worth of utility work and they experienced $10 million worth of unidentified or misidentified utility work, we take that same ratio and apply it, or use that as a data set for going forward for our estimates. Now, that is looking at defining the initial risk, but then what we also do is look at how can we manage that risk and reduce it. So are there ways that we could transfer this risk to the design builder, or is there ways that we could do utility investigations prior to construction? I mean, so it's all about what can we do to manage it and reduce that impact. And then as we go through construction, we monitor and control and see how we did on our initial assessment.
Okay, thank you. So if I understand correctly, you would do historical, look at historical records and analysis, confer with the one-call center to see where there may be plans and older records of where these utilities are, and is that pretty much how you would start with the risk analysis?
Yeah, that would all be part of the defining the risk, yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Hong?
Yes, in real time, I mean, this is great. I appreciate this presentation. It kind of helps us understand your system and your database. But, in real time, we have had some problems. And primarily being proactive rather than reactive. How can you catch a lot of these design flaws, such as those plastic shims, failures of the cables, and the structural components of the station in the design phase rather than during the construction phase?
Speaking to the shims and the cables first, that is not necessarily a risk to our construction. I mean, that was something that was a construction flaw, or what was it?
Yeah, that was a problem with the materials with regards to the shims, and Director Hung, there's not much we can do about that. We specify something, we get a certification on it, and the product comes out, and it's not the right product. Actually, we had shifted the responsibility to the contractor in that particular case, and the contractor has committed that they are going to replace those. With regards to the tendons, it comes down to workmanship out there. So as much as possible, this program tries to minimize the risk, as Alex pointed out, identify the risk first, and then take whatever action we can, either to share it or to mitigate it in some way. Those situations that you just mentioned, it's the material side, it's almost impossible to be able to prevent something like that. But again, the risk is on the contractor. With regards to the tendons, we just have to make sure that the workmanship is correct that's out there.
I mean, with the calculations, I'm not an engineer. I did take pre-engineering courses. but with the engineers and the calculations and computers that they have, and you still have failures, this is what I'm concerned about. And you guys are blaming the material defects. That should be all checked out before. You know, I've worked on pre-stressed concrete plants. I know the tensions, the loads, the load factors.
So my understanding of the tendon issue was a construction deficiency. It was a process out in the field.
Well, I mean, somebody got to be liable for it, and it should have been checked, and we should have been more proactive in identifying these materials and making sure that they could sustain the load factors.
You're right, and we're making every effort in the future to mitigate that.
Well, I just was wondering if this program would be able to help eliminate some of that.
In some areas it will.
Okay.
This program is certainly an improvement over anything that we've had in the past. And much credit goes to Alex and his consultant, Ken Smith here, who have worked on it. I mean, Alex has worked on this for 6 months, and we're to this point right now. And again, it's what's helped us come up with our cost estimate now. And the cost estimate, I mean, we're trying to give you with the cost estimate the actual numbers, the way it is. We're not trying to fudge anything. We're not trying to force anything in. We're trying to give you the most honest answers. That's the best we can do. Alex has done a great job. Again, he's mentioned that when these numbers, he develops these numbers, every single project manager that's responsible for a contract is brought in, and there's a challenging situation there, and it is tense because project managers don't like to be challenged on their cost estimates and what they have. But Alex and his team does that, and we get a better product out of it eventually.
Terry Lee?
Two questions. And I hate to put you on the spot like this, but this $8.6 billion number that you guys have derived through this process, what's your level of confidence as a probability that that's not going to go higher?
Actually, we have very high confidence, okay? I would say in the 85-90% range, okay? But there are certainly unknowns out there, okay? As the director brought out, we are dealing with utilities, and we get the best information we can. To that point, we have a subsurface contractor out there right now that is actually determining where each of the utilities are. This is something that we didn't do in the past, but it's worth the investment to do it up front, and we're doing that now. And again, that information comes back, they share it with Alex's team, and it goes into the calculations that we have there. And our contingency is much higher. Our contingency right now is double what it was with the full funding grant agreement. With the full funding grant agreement, it was like $600 million, and I think we're up to 1.3 now. So,
Second question, Sam, is have you guys explored public-private partnership structures in terms of actually building like the city center portion of the project or anything like that?
we've looked at it, but not in that areas. We had some people come in, we talked to them, but most of the people that came in were like venture capitalists along those lines. We didn't have anybody who was ready to take on that particular contract, so to speak. And again, we only have 2 contracts left. That goes to your confidence level of how we feel about these. The City Center and Pearl Highlands. Those are the last 2 contracts that we have.
Do you think that's worth pursuing at this point?
We're continuing to do it.
The public-private partnership?
Yeah.
Okay.
We reach out to different areas. People give us things from inquiries from time to time, and we follow up on those. But so far, most of them have been very minimal, to be honest with you.
So, but have we been aggressive at all in trying to pursue these opportunities, or were we just more reactive?
In the beginning, we were very aggressive with it, but we tapered off a bit since then, and we're more reactive, as you would call it.
And is that because our initial efforts really didn't produce much results?
It didn't.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Members, any other questions or comments? Sam and Alex, I have one. You know, first of all, thank you for doing a risk risk management process. However, the concept of risk with this project sets off alarms because, as you know, the 2014 risk refresh by the PMO basically is the one that almost put us into the recovery mode in 2014, and that was what told us we needed to go and get additional funds. And then, of course, the 2016 risk refresh is something else that has also now triggered the position that we're in today. So the PMO speaks about your robust risk management program, and it's probably robust because we didn't have it before. So I think that's a good start. But they're saying that we are using a bottoms-up risk modeling approach. The focus is primarily on construction contracts. The PMOC has emphasized that HART must still focus on soft costs and ancillary contracts since they can impact the overall cost and schedule. HART must still update the risk and contingency management plan, which would include development of cost and schedule drawdown curves.
Correct.
The reason why I raise that is, as we all know, it's when they come in every 2 years, they meaning FTA comes in every 2 years, and they do this risk refresh that seems to blow us all up. And then we're looking at, well, what is the real amount? Like in 2014, in that risk refresh, we had the figure 7.6 billion as the quote 100% outbound figure. So now we also have the 10 point whatever billion figure in the 2016 risk refresh. I don't want us to be looking at this in 2018 and saying, my God, they were correct again. So when they've given us these comments about the risk modeling that you've done, how do you address the PMO that they're saying we're construction-based, we're too down up, and we've had this discussion before, Sam, that they use a different model than what we thought it should be.
They do.
So I guess the first question is, why wouldn't we just use their model if we're doing it? And second, why is our modeling, or your modeling, a better way of looking at this? And again, I want to at least say that I'm appreciative of the fact that we now have a rich risk management, 6 months or so that Alex worked on it. But that's a concern, because the bottom line is what the FDA anticipates that we are doing in terms of the risk refresh that they are.
I'm going to turn it over to Alex with regards to the model. I will tell you, our model is much more sophisticated, okay? And this is from a guy who worked at FDA. Okay, our model is much more sophisticated. With regards to their comments, each time they bring up a comment, we address it with them within the next month. Okay, the soft costs, we treat each of those as a contract, and Alex has gone through this process with the soft costs. So we are addressing those. We're addressing every single cost that we have on the project. With regards to the model itself, do you want to answer?
So to expand on that, yes, we do a very rigorous bottoms-up cost estimate, and specifically on the construction contracts. We are very concerned about our soft costs and them growing, but we also see that the root cause of any of those costs to get larger are because of delays, and usually delays to construction. So that's why we do this very rigorous bottoms up with construction, because we see that as the root cause of your soft costs growing. One of the key improvements that we've done to this risk management process is that in our model, what we do is we build schedule logic. And so every existing contract that we have, construction, our soft cost consulting contracts, our oversight contracts, they're all linked with logic links of schedule. So anytime that a risk event triggers a schedule delay on a construction contract, that also pushes out our soft costs. So it gives us a total picture, or a big picture view of what any of these decisions are what these risk impacts are. So even though a field team may say, hey, I have to write a change order for a 2-month delay, it's going to cost me $6 million or what have you, the model we'll pick it up and say, okay, well, it's $6 million to your contract, but overall to the program, there's an additional $2 million for soft cost or what have you. So we have a better picture or a better idea of what each of these risks or changes or what have you, how they impact the program.
So, Alex, let me ask you this. It's sort of in the line of John Henry Felix's forensic audit. Have you ever applied this in the past? In other words, take a time frame where we know that we were completely off in terms of our assessment, using your model to validate it. In other words, going back and validating it forward, and then saying, hey, you know, this bottoms-up approach with treating soft costs the way we're treating it is really very effective, because look, we would have predicted where we are at a certain point in time, like say up to the 2016 risk refresh or whatever point in time, and said our model would have been better. Have you done that?
No, we have not looked back. It would be really hard to kind of do what you're asking, because it would be hard to pull those people back to give us their initial cost estimates of what they thought it was versus how it all evolved.
See,
But
that's
we are
interesting, because
we are
I
using it
would
for-
think it'd be easier, because you're looking back and you have almost 20/20 hindsight. All I'm asking is whether or not there was a way to actually validate the model. And it would seem like to apply it to where we were and coming forward, that would be the easiest way to validate it, and that would be your argument with the PMO as to why your model is better than the model that they use, because they're kind of criticizing you for this bottoms-up approach.
We do use the existing data for our future projections.
Yeah, but that's not my question. My question is whether you took something from the past, applied this model retroactively to see whether you could predict something, and obviously the answer is no, you didn't. And I would think that at some point, if it's possible, that you should do that, because that would be your best argument with the PMO as to why our methodology is better than their methodology.
That's a good point, Chair. The only thing would be if we could, and again, your mindset, not the Monday morning quarterback, but you'd have to go back in time and be able to predict the risk at that particular time, which we should know by now, obviously. But I think it's a good practice. To be honest with you, I've been beating on him to get the budget done, okay?
Right.
But I think it's a good practice, and to Director Henry's suggestion, maybe we could incorporate it then. But I think it would be good. And you seem to infer that the FTA or the PMO was indicating that the bottoms up was not the best way to go. I didn't read that in there. I just thought they were making the statement that we did a bottoms up estimate. There's nothing wrong with a bottoms up estimate.
Yeah, I'm not saying that they're saying, the fact that they would call attention to our modeling, which is different from their modeling.
Well, they do a top down.
Right, which is to me, they're making a statement because they're pointing it out. They're not saying it doesn't matter, pointing it out. But.
Well, you bring up a good point, and it would be a good exercise to go through. And once we have our budget completed, maybe I'll let him do that.
Thank you. Terry.
Thank you, Chair. Sam, Alex, you're using a modeling software, right? So I assume this modeling software was developed by some third-party vendor. In the industry, what is the general consensus on the reliability and accuracy of this software?
The experiences that our consultant had has been very, very positive. This particular program that we have run here, the PMO has gone over it, and we've given it to them and their consultants, and they're very impressed by it. And of course, we share everything, so we will have them continue to critique what we do.
So in other projects that have used this modeling software, when they're actually able, when they've completed the project and tested it against the modeling, has it been accurate?
Yes.
The only difference is that they have gotten in earlier on the projects than we have. They've come in the middle here. But usually, a lot of their experiences have been right from the get-go. They've used this experience, and it's helped them. Again, it's a tool. This is not a reactive. This is a tool that we use. And even though we go through it once, and it was very intense, but the PMs have bought into it. They understand it now, and now it's part of our repertoire of tools that we go through and the project managers use. And each month, Alex goes through with them.
And the fact that we've started midstream, if you will, utilizing this modeling software, does the consultant feel that impairs the reliability of the modeling at all?
No, it's just a little harder to get started and everything. Okay? So we think we're on the right track, but we just haven't had enough time to see the fruits of our labor yet.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I think the only thing that you may have to explain to the public is, why are we starting midstream? Why didn't we have a risk management, and I see they're smiling, the risk management program in place, because that is such a critical part of any real project.
That's a fair question, and there's a number of things that the public asked, and we should be accountable to them and be able to explain why.
Thank you very much. Members, any other questions? Thank you very much. Members, we're moving to item number 9, which is Resolution 216-21, directing the Honolulu Authority for Rapid Transportation to restart acquisition of real property in the city center section of the Honolulu Rail Transit Program. Jesse Suki. Okay.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning.
Thank you for your service, by the way, be missed.
Another one who misses me. I got 2 now. Thank you.
And other members of the board. So we're bringing this resolution forward. As you recall, the board decided to temporarily stop acquisition for certain types of negotiations that were ongoing in the city center area, primarily due because of the FDA's call for a recovery plan. And so there was some uncertainty about the progression of the project. Since then, there's been some events that happened, and we feel at the staff level and in right-of-way that it might be a good time to revisit this resolution. And so we prepared a recommended resolution for the board to allow us to move forward, basically repealing that past resol. We hope we did a good enough job so that it stands on its own as written, but just to point out some of the key points that we made in there. We did submit HART, an interim plan, to the FDA in response to their June 6th and August 7th letters about the recovery plan. And in that interim plan, HART talked about the city's strong support for Plan A, which is the entire project as described in the full funding grant agreement. So that will be inclusive of City Center, Middle Street to Ala Moana. The interim plan also stated that HART is continuing with right-of-way acquisitions sensitive to the Honolulu City Council's and the HART Board of Directors' concerns that HART work proactively with business owners to avoid prematurely displacing or interrupting businesses in advance of actual construction. And that bit of language there came from our discussions with council, because shortly after the call for a recovery plan and the board's resolution to slow down on some of the transactions, the council considered a resolution that would have stopped acquisition. And HART had some discussions with the council and the proposer of that resolution in hearings. And the primary concern of the introducer of that resolution was that business owners would be affected in the area, among other things. And so in our discussions, we talked about how, getting the property as soon as we can, because sometimes these transactions, given the position of the city and HART to not use eminent domain, use it as a last resort, to have amicable transactions, it takes a while. So some of these transactions can take over a year. So even though we're getting the properties, and we need to get it prior to construction, of course, early, tenants of landowners who have businesses, we're not requiring them to move unless we really need the property right away. And the fact is, though, most landowners who need to move, or tenants who have businesses who need to move, they do prefer to move right away because we provide benefits under the Uniform Act to help them move and relocate their business. But the ones who choose to stay, we can do month to month until construction is there and needs it. So we did make that point to the council. And I think that in part is what helped council to decide to recommit that resolution to committee, a budget committee, and not move it forward. We also provided the council member who introduced that bill some information that she wanted, and that included all the transactions that we were working on, the amount of property tax foregone, and the cost of keeping the properties safe and clean. And so we transmitted that to her, and we also transmitted it to the board as a copy. And so, as Sam had mentioned, we have just 2 contracts left, and City Center is one of them. And as you've heard in other presentations, there's some pre-work that's being done on utilities, for example. So we are in a position where we need to acquire this property. And again, going back to the issue of business owners and landowners, I think what we've been encountering is that they may not like it that we're taking a piece of their property, but they do like certainty. And so right now with this resolution that was previously passed for good reason, it does create uncertainty about where we are in the status and whether or not we're acquiring these properties. And they've already been identified, and they've hired experts to help with their side of the transaction. And so they're paying these bills, and it would provide certainty if you pass this to those landowners and to the rural section so that we can move forward with these transactions and get them done and lay the groundwork for the construction that's coming after us. So we humbly request that the board considers and passes this resolution. And if you have any questions.
Thank you. Members, anybody with questions? Yes, Mr. Chalico.
Thank you, Jesse. Have a question regarding coordination with the acquisition and the subdivision process. Is the acquisition process completed between HART and the property owner prior to submittal of a subdivision for either an easement or outright parcel?
So without getting too much into the whole process, when we get a request to acquire property from a design team, we give it to an acquisition agent, and they go out in the field and they start negotiating with the landowner. And it's usually a partial take, so subdivision is involved. We need to get the landowner's permission before we subdivide. So depending on our conversations with the landowner, we may do that sooner or later in the process, depending on how the landowner wants to approach it. But definitely before recordation of the transaction, I mean, it needs to be subdivided with either the Bureau or Land Court. So, and the city subdivision process needs to be completed before that. So, I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that's how we approach it.
Thank you, Jesse. Yes, you did answer my question.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? If not, members, I believe this is asking for an action that we adopt. So before that, any members of the public wish to address this? Seeing no one, members, can we have a motion if we are so inclined to so move? Second?
Second.
It's moved and seconded. We're in discussion, members. Anyone have any comments about Resolution 21621?
Madam Chair, just in the interest of full disclosure, I just wanted to let the board and the public know that I do have a client and a good friend that owns property on Kapolani Boulevard that would be the subject of a negotiation. obviously I would recuse myself on any decisions relative to that specific parcel, but that particular landowner did express frustration to me that the discussions had stopped, and so it created a lot of uncertainty for him. And so I just share that with the board and the public.
Yeah. Any other members? If not, then members, do we have unanimous consent on this resolution?
Yes.
Yes, we do. Thank you, Jesse. Your resolution has been approved.
Thank you.
Okay.
Now we gotta get back to work. Thank you.
Just remember, we passed the when you come up for right away, make it short. Okay. Jill Odo for September monthly progress report. You gave us last time.
Yes, so Chair,
Just in case.
if I can just introduce this. So Jill, Sam and Jill have done a lot of hard work on looking at the prior progress report and seeing whether or not there was information in there that was not of value to the board, yet was taking a lot of time from staff to compile and present, or if there was a way to present stuff in a format that was more functional for the board. And to that extent, I think Jill has put together a revised progress report that significantly improves the ability of the board to cull important information from this progress report without sitting down and having to look to previously what was a 100-plus page report. So I wanted Jill to go through and be able to describe for you some of the changes that she's implemented.
Mr. Acting Executive Director, you took out all the pictures,
We took out a lot of photos.
and you took out color.
We took out some color, yes.
All right. So with that, just so that everybody knows, go ahead, Jill. Thank you. Or Sam.
Sam Carnaggio, Project Director. And again, some time ago, Chair, we took offense at the fact that you had said that when you wanted to read a report on the job, you read the PMO's report.
But it's true.
It's true.
No, but I like your 11 by 17.
Thank you.
But that's made for the PMO too.
But we had some ideas for making improvements and changes to this over the past year, and we were not able to implement them. With Director Formby coming on board, not only did he allow us to make some changes, he encouraged us and related to us some of his frustrations with what we had before, besides the pictures and the color. Jill has had some ideas over the past year that we've been able to implement in the recent months. This past September report is better than in what it was in the past. We're trying to make it readable and certainly more transparent to the public and to the board. And the one that we're finishing now for October is even better. But let Jill, who is our management analyst in charge of this, go through and give you some of the details.
Thank you. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you. Jill Odo with Project Controls. So as Michael and Sam are mentioning, we did do a real hard look at the monthly report, and we really tried to focus on cost, schedule, and key issues, and how can we best represent those things in the monthly report so it's a lot more readable and easier to get through. So we made changes throughout the entire report, and pages 9 through 10 of the September report, they actually capture all of the major highlights of the changes that we've made in this report. And as Sam alluded to, there will be other changes that will be coming in the October report. So there were just some things that we did want to just mention to the board as well as the public in terms of the changes that occurred. So in the September report on pages 13 through 14, there is some of the financial information for the project. And previously there had been a lot more graphics and tables that were somewhat repeating the information just in different ways. So we tried to cull it back, figure out what's the best way to present this information, and we've kind of just streamlined these sections. Moving on to the contract pages in the report, starting on page 18 and going to page 46 are all of the contract pages. So the changes that we made to the contract pages were across the board. So one of the changes that we did make in the September report was the schedule section previously had a graphic. And we've actually removed all of those graphics for the schedule section and replaced it with copy, just discussing where each contract is going in terms of schedule. Previously, there had also been a critical path issues section and a key issues section. We've actually combined both of those sections into one key issues area, so it's really easy for people to see what are all the major key issues that each project is facing. One of the other changes that we'll be implementing in the October report is in an effort to really highlight cost and schedule. So in the October report, we're going to be removing the cost curve that's currently on the first page of each contract page. We're going to remove that image, but we're going to keep the information. We're going to move it into a box that will be at the top of each contract page that will show percentage complete based on expenditures, and then we'll also have an area showing the schedule status so people can quickly see, is the project on time or is it X amount of months behind? So that will be a really quick, easy way for people to reference how each contract is doing. In the October report, we'll also be adding in a key milestones section so people will be able to see what milestones have been reached this month and how are we tracking towards future milestones that are coming up. And the final change that we did want to mention was in the appendix section, starting on page 74 to 76, there is a cost report that's currently in there. And we are actually going to be removing this cost report because we're going to maintain the information, but we are going to add some information into it. So on pages 80 to 81 of the September report is a list of awarded contracts, and it shows the contract dates as well as the contract substantial completion dates. So we're going to be combining the information in these two tables into one table, so it'll be really easy and quick to see how each contract is doing. So those are the highlights that we wanted to mention. If there are any questions, please.
Thank you, members. Any questions? I just have a comment, and that is that, as Sam knows, I love his 11 by 17s, and I wish that there was some way that you would incorporate that into the report, though I do believe that the board should have it as a separate document. I think the important aspect of this is, and though it's very small print, is really the contract drawdowns. Because I think that as board members, we're always asked the question, so how much federal monies did we receive? How much how much did we take out? How much of the contract money is still there? You know, so I think that one of the things that you have it as a contingency drawdown here. Mm-hmm. And I think that those are the things that the public really want to focus on. And the problem in the past is that it kind of all gets lost in everything. So I think that that's a critical element for the public. And I think they would really appreciate a very clear one-page thing that says, this is how much money came in from the feds, this is how much we've drawn down, this is how much is left, and basically even on the GET money. Because I think that's the bottom line, and people like bottom lines. And that's why I congratulate you on this report. It's about 50% of the size it used to be. And if you can get it down even to the 11 by 17, you'd be in great shape. Thank you.
We're working on it.
Yeah, thank you. Members, any other question or comments? No. Thank you very much. Good work. Thank you. Next, we're item number 11, September Project Management Oversight Contractor Report. My favorite report, Michael Formby.
So Sam, I'll invite you up. Is there anything that you specifically want to address in the PMOC report for the board, or is it just for their reading?
It's just for their reading. If they see anything, and the chair usually does let me know if she sees anything that's different, and hopefully should be focusing more on our report in the future.
I told you, risk management. So you gotta look at that. But and of course, as you all know, there's always the HECO provision, which is the undergrounding that you've got to get some kind of a basic handle on sooner or later. But those are always the major issues in the PMO report.
Yes.
Members, any questions or comments on the PMO report? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam.
Number 12, construction and traffic update. Kainani, Nick Ching, and Kevin Cox.
Aloha, Kainani Kraut, the West Side Construction Manager. Going to highlight the progress on the west. Again, West Oahu, Farrington Guideway. We're basically working at LCC at the at-grade station, getting the track work done through there. The projected completion is March 2017, and working on punch list items and a lot of turnover between contractors, between Kiewit, Ansaldo, and between Kiewit and our station contractors. The West Oahu Station Group's about 8% complete. All the drilled shafts at UH West Oahu are completed. Grading and work there continuing. False work, formwork, and concrete reinforcement is ongoing at Ho'opili with the platform girders in the TCCR room or the train control rooms, which are necessary to turn over to Ansaldo. For that contract, the completion is still looking at March 2018. The Farrington Highway Station Group follows. All the drilled shaft at Westlock have been completed. The ancillary buildings in the TCCR rooms, we're working on that there, as well as the vertical raceway conduit, which goes from train control up to the guideway to help run the train. And that completion, again, is looking at January 2018. So that's guideway and the first two station groups. MSF, still working on a couple of the bigger items for closeout and punch list and corrective actions at the operation and service building to correct some ponding issues they were having there, as well as just finalizing some of the conflicts that we've had with KKJV. And the H2R2 ramp retaining wall is complete. We're continuing with the installation of stabilization mat, and the contract completion for that is towards the end of this year. Pearl Highlands Transit Center and Garage, we're currently working on preparing that solicitation to put that out on the street. And then the Cam Highway Guideway, the construction of the balance cantilever has been complete over H1. The heading at Pearl Ridge Station is starting to demobilize. We are in the last 11 spans of the guideway erection. All columns have been completed, and we're looking to finish civil work, really working hand in hand with Kiewit on basically the road work that will complete that contract, and really diligently working towards May 2017. The Cam Highway Station Group, the NTP was issued this month. We had the groundbreaking recently. They're mobilizing at Pearl Highlands, and we're working on getting them started at Pearl Ridge simultaneously, and just finalizing access between Kiewit and this station contractor at Aloha Stadium, so those dates align with the contract completion as of May 2019. So those are just some highlights on the progress for the West. It's east after, so.
Okay. Members, would you like us to go right through and then have questions, or do you want to stop and have questions on this segment first? Any preference? If not, we'll go right through. Go ahead.
Okay, Kevin Cox representing East Construction for the airport utilities contract held by non-incorporated. Went through substantial completion earlier this month, October 7th, which generated a series of punch lists that they've been working on and have completed as of last week. The on-call contractor is out there right now doing some follow-up work for work that was discovered during the non-contract, whether it was hazardous materials or things like that. So you will still see work going on out there, but it's the on-call contractor that's doing that work. And then as far as the airport guideway stations contract, again, that was awarded to the Shimmick Trader and Granite joint venture back in September. We had talked with them about notice to proceed this year. They had approached us about doing kind of a phased notice to proceed with a limited notice to proceed in November, followed on by a full notice to proceed at the beginning of 2016. However, in most recent discussions, we were looking actually to do a full notice to proceed probably around the first part of December.
Are you done?
I am.
And this is traffic now?
Yes, I don't know if we have anybody here to represent the core systems.
Okay. So Kevin? No, Nick. Sorry, Kevin, you just.
That's me.
Yeah.
I'm Nick Ching,
Right.
HART traffic engineer, just here to provide some updates on the traffic. So in Farrington Highway, Waipahu, there's still ongoing various daytime, nighttime closures between Old Fort River Road and Kahuali Street for finishing signal work through next month, except Thanksgiving weekend. Kamehameha Highway in Pearl City, same thing, various daytime, nighttime closures between Acacia and Pu'uponi Street for traffic signal work, also through next month, except Thanksgiving weekend. And the Balanced Cantilever area, H1 in Pearl City, they're still continuing to take some nightly closures on eastbound and westbound H1 through November, also except Thanksgiving weekend. And these are intermittent closures. They're not every day, every night. Moving eastward, more into Pearl City, there's this nightly westbound contraflow between Kuleana Road, which is where the Hinkle Power Plant is, and Pu'uponi Street for Balanced Cantilever structure work when that occurs through next month, also except Thanksgiving, obviously. And when that happens, there's no left turns at Kuleana, and the eastbound left turn detour is at Kaahumanu Street. As we move our way to Aiea, at night there's full detours between Kanuku and Kaunoi Street for utility and equipment removal work through next month, except Thanksgiving. And they have just actually disassembled the truss there and removed it. I think either today or tomorrow it's going to be completely gone from that area. And the detour for the utility work is along Moanalua Loop for eastbound and westbound directions. And then by Halava Stadium area, there's continues to be a 24/7 westbound contraflow for all the work, structure work in there. And that's going to continue for a little bit. And then Kamehameha Highway near Pearl Harbor, there's some utility work there, so there's various daytime and nighttime closures there, and they're really striving to work hard there and finish up as soon as possible. So they'll be working pretty much 7 days a week there.
Thank you. Members, any questions of west side, east side, and traffic? Yes.
Chair, so Kamehameha Highway and Aiea, the full detour that you're talking about near the construction area for the Pearl Ridge Station, this is 24/7, is that?
No. This is just for nighttime.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
So
it's
what
not
time does it start and finish?
Believe it's from 8 p.m. to 5:30 a.m.
Okay.
That's typically when we allow night work.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments, members? Kainani, it's fascinating, but the question that I always get is shims and tendons. And you wouldn't think the public would follow, but they are really interested in the shims and tendons. Where are we on the shims and tendons? I think the last time you were here, we were talking about potentially the testing. We had the commitment that the 165,000 of them would be replaced. And there was an issue as to who was going to pay for the actual physical replacement. And how confident are we that what we're replacing with is going to withstand? Because, they're cracking without any train on top of it. So where are we, just so that the public can know?
We recently received Kiewit's test results. We got our own test results, and we're in the process of analyzing and comparing. Unfortunately, it's not giving us a conclusive answer at this point, so we're conferring with our experts. I'm hoping to set up that call next week and really looking at what other transit agencies are doing as far as specifying shim material and things like that. So we're in the analysis stage of results that have been received. My PM for KKJV or MSF has been on leave, and we've been asking for the response from KKJV. We have not gotten their test results yet to be able to compare. We're also asking Kiewit for their action plan, and now that they have their results, what are they proposing for in particular, Wolf KHG, they feel confident what they're installing is appropriate. We're still analyzing what they're installing, if we concur that it's appropriate. So that's shims. I did have Mike sitting in the background because he's been more involved with the tendon issue. And I think, it's almost a daily meeting with Kiewit as far as how they're progressing and what their next steps are. So if it's okay, I'd like to bring Mike up to give you a quick
Sure.
update on that.
Good morning, Mike Yoshida. I'm the project manager for Wolf and Kamehameha Guideway. We introduced the tendon issue at Kapolei Hale, I believe, and Taka Kimura told you about our tendons and that we found 12 tendons that were problems, 3 due to corrosion and 9 due to soft grout. And I believe, Chair, you had asked about what about the other tendons. We have met with Kiewit regularly to talk about various testing procedures. And just recently, earlier this week, we've come to a verbal agreement as to how we might proceed in future further testing. And that includes a two-pronged effort. The first is we're going to visually look at all of the remaining tendons. There is a rubber boot, 6 of them actually, at each of the tendons that we can take off, actually remove and expose the grout. And what this would do is to give us a visual confirmation that the grout is complete and intact and of good integrity. And we plan to do that for all the tendons. Secondly, we are going to employ a firm from Florida, or Kiewit is, and we are going to do a vibration impulse test, which is kind of like a sonar, if you will. And what that does is, in between those rubber boots, we're going to test non-destructively the integrity of the grout and make sure that the tendon ducts are completely full. We've come to the conclusion that the best insurance for longevity and safety of the guideway is good grout. And so those are the two things that we are going to focus on. Both tests are going to entail all of the tendons.
Good. And do we have an assessment as to who's paying?
Who's paying for the tests?
The tests.
Kiewit is
Kiewit's going to pay
for the test.
And I assume that if there's a need to replace the tendons as they have in the past, that Kiewit will also assume that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Of course, we're hoping that there's not going to be any replacement necessary, but if there is, this is the way we're going to find it.
And it will be like we have in the past, which is to replace the whole tendon, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Members, any questions? And so Kainani, it's still an ongoing progress on our shims, and we still have the issue of the specs saying not more than 9/16, and then we, of course, it's the plinth and the plintless issue. So I assume that one of the positions still remains that if it's over 2 inches, it's got to go, you got to put in a plinth in essence. Is that still what?
Yes.
That's still what you're
Yes,
planning
yes.
to do?
And we have started investigating the commercial side of things.
Okay.
And that's
So
ongoing as well.
I would recommend that until we have a resolution that you do a monthly report to the board as to the status of those 2 particular issues, simply because I've never seen people in the public so interested in shims and tendons. At least everyone's vocabulary has now expanded. Mine has. So thank you very much. Members, any questions on the east side? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, members, we're going to right away update number 13, which is Jesse Suki and Morris Atta Oh, is there somebody who wishes to speak? Yeah, oh, sorry. Rose? I didn't see you on any other issue, sorry.
I'm Rose Poe. I have questions about where the constructions are, because in some places, the signal lights down where the constructions are not long enough for us people to cross the street because of the construction. And I was wondering, is there any way they can put the little white man up longer to hold it there so we can walk, at least make it across the street? And have the construction guys tell us if they're in the way?
Good point. Yeah, there's Nick is sitting next to you.
Hey, thanks for your concern. We have, you know, there's during construction, there's always issues of, you know, we get complaints about the green light not being long enough, and what you just mentioned. And a lot of times we have temporary devices in place that get knocked around, and so they get out of sync. So we're always talking to the contractor about, you know, reinstating those. But in response to your question about the hand, that's all tied to the signal timing.
Yes.
So it's got to correlate with the green light and all that stuff. So can you, which in particular intersection are you concerned about, or do you remember?
It's all of them.
All of
I go
them?
out to Waipahu, I go out to Pearl City, I go to Pearl Ridge, and when I cross them, I get like almost to the end, and then the lights start flashing. And
So do you get stuck in the middle of the intersection, or are you able to cross all the way?
I kind of run,
You kind of run?
and then there's cracks in the cement, so I almost
Yeah.
trip. But even the guys that are doing the construction, I got to the other side, and I was trying to walk down the sidewalk, and they were in the way, but they didn't do nothing. They just said, "Oh, there's something in the way," and I said, "Help."
Yeah, we're constantly working with the contractors because they're, you know, in the work zone, there's a lot of large objects and
Yeah.
equipment there. And so we're always making, you know, having them ensure that there is a safe passageway for
Yes.
pedestrians, because that's a safety issue.
It is.
So we will continue to work diligently on that and make sure that, you know, especially when they're doing the signal work,
Yeah,
a lot of the
that's-
ramps get closed and there's sidewalks closed. And so we want to make sure that pedestrians and people like you can get across safely, right, in
Yes,
a
that's all
timely
I
manner.
want is to make the little white guy stay longer so we can walk across.
Okay. Yeah, we'll definitely have the contractor take a look at it and review
Okay.
it.
Like in Pearl City, I go by Zippy's and I cross at that light, and that light don't stay on longer. No.
Okay. Thanks for your concern.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe we'll ask Ford to make sure that white guy stayed on long to begin with.
Contract the city and county Honolulu.
That's why I was looking at Mark Garrity.
Wow. All right.
We have to be sure that it was operational to begin with. It may have always been bad, right, Ford?
Yes.
Okay. Jesse Suki Morris Ata. You don't have to keep talking, you know, I mean.
Hello again, Chair.
Hello.
And board members, Jesse Suki, Director of Planning, Permitting and Right-of-Way. Morris has a well-deserved day off today.
Oh, great.
But for our presentation, there's not much to tell. The numbers haven't changed since our last meeting. There was a recent board meeting in September. So I know you wanted me to be brief. I can go through it, but nothing's changed.
Oh,
Are there any
nothing's
questions?
Members, anybody interested in this? Yes.
Now that we've passed the resolution that you had requested regarding City Center, how quickly do you think that the numbers will begin to change, or we can see updates with regard to those particular properties?
So this is our slide for City Center, and it shows where we have actual construction access. So there's 125 tax map keys, and we have access to 50. So we have more than 30 on hold, And it's hard to say how fast it'll move, but I do know we had situations where, as Board Member Lee mentioned, where there were oral discussions, but because there wasn't a written agreement, we couldn't move on them, and they actually wanted to move forward. So there's going to be a handful of those at least.
Thank you.
Any other questions, members? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tell Morris I hope he liked his day off. And believe it or not, members, we actually made it all the way through, and we are going to have the acting executive director's report. Is this the first and last one you're going to give?
It's definitely the last. In case the audience did not know, I did submit my letter of resignation to the mayor effective November 7th. So this is my last official meeting, and there were a couple things I wanted to do. One, I think it's also very important that the board be introduced to key personnel that you may call upon from time to time. So today, I wanted, and it was actually an initiative that was led by the chair herself before City Council, where she recognized that the board administrator, Cindy Matsushita, did not have the staff that she needed to address requests and concerns from the board. And she asked the City Council to budget for assistance. And Cindy was able to recruit 2 assistants, and they're here today. It's Michelle Carter and William Nakamatsu, and if they could come up. And so we're fortunate to have both of them join HART. They're here to assist Cindy in responding to requests from the board. So, Chair, we thank you for that. Second, I wanted you to meet the 2 O&M individuals that I spoke about earlier that work for HART. Stu Jakes, if you could come up with Robert Coe. And Chair, if you'll indulge me, I would like very briefly for Stu to explain to you the O&M function that is associated with the design and the construction of the project before the train is actually operating.
Stu Jakes, Chair, board members. O&M. O&M. Well, we're early. I tell everybody I'm a year ahead of myself and a year behind myself all at the same time, because our role will be to oversee Ansaldo's development as they move towards interim operating, trial running, and then ultimate opening. So it's rules, procedures, manuals, checks and balances. The 3 items are, as I said, rules, procedures, and training. And those will be our main focuses moving up and forward, and then after that, it'll be just the development of an organization to oversee what they're doing.
Okay. So if you have any questions, they're available to answer, but it's a program that we're ramping up inside HART in anticipation of one day rail operating and that function, if the voters so decide, going to DTS. Okay.
I do want to add that I got a call over the weekend to come and say goodbye to the model, I guess, train, for lack of better description, that was being moved from Kapolei, I think, to Leeward Community College. And I think it's important for the public to know that Leeward is doing a very active type of recruitment and training for our rail operations center and the work that's going to be done there. So thank you very much to the extent that you're doing it, because they are recruiting our local students to actually fit in. So thank you very much. I don't know what they're going to do with a wood...
Driver simulation or something.
Oh, yeah, okay. I was surprised to learn it's wood. But anyway, so that when you go to Kapolei and it's not there anymore, it's at Leeward Community College. Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen. And then I also wanted to mention that earlier when we were talking about the budget process, we talked about the budget being approved by the board and submitted to the mayor on December the 1st. And that's also the commitment that we've made for the financial plan to be delivered to the city, and it will go to both the administration, the council, and it will also go to the legislature. So we're hard at work on the financial plan as well. And basically that's the substance of my report, other than I wanted to thank you for the resolution and the sentiments from the board. It's very awkward to sit here and hear people talking about you. You feel like you want to leave. But the important thing to me is that we function as a board. It's a team, and we've always functioned that way, and it's always been us speaking with each other and playing off each other and sharing concerns, and so the team approach has worked very well, and I thank you for allowing me to work with all of you over the last 4 years on the board. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is that the end of your report, Michael
That's it.
Formby?
That's it.
Boy, the only report we get, and it's so short, but that's okay. So members, again, thank you all very much, and I'm sure that the Charter Amendment number 4 will pass, and this board will take on even more responsibilities. But with that, members, I'm calling for adjournment. Any objection? If not, we are adjourned.